Okay, another reading from The Sovereign Child. I'm going to go with chapter 4 here. This is, I think, the most important chapter, really. This is the meat of the book. And I probably should have started the book off with this chapter, but the point of it is to review the harms of compulsory rules and rule enforcement, to sweep away the idea that enforcing rules, just, the collateral damage that comes from rule enforcement is worth it. And I'm really going to look deeply at what those harms are. And I present them in four categories. And I'm going to start things off with this note on terminology, which is a clarification of what I mean by the word rule. And this is probably the main source of, I would say, maybe disagreement or confusion or pushback, comes down to me clarifying what I mean by rules for kids. And so here we go. I'm going to read directly. A note on terminology. The word rule means different things for adults and children because kids generally can't opt out of rules. Adults can almost always opt out of rules. They always have the option to leave almost any situation and go to the privacy of their home, where even the police can't enter without a special dispensation. So there you have it. Really, that is the main difference. Is that adults can opt out of rules, and kids can opt out of some rules. Right? They can opt out of rules of a game. If they're playing a game of, a board game or something, or horsing around, and there's some rules they can opt out of, and I don't have any problem with that. In fact, I think those rules are the best because, in the context of being able to opt out of rules, people only engage with the rules that they welcome and understand, or at least agree to play ball with. So adults, if they don't like the rules of the road, they can not drive a car. They can walk or take a bike, ride a bike, or whereas kids, right? The example I use all the time is teeth brushing. If there's a teeth brushing rule, then when it's bedtime, the the parent will come and find the kid and make them brush their teeth. And it's interesting, in the adult world, this almost never happens. There's almost never an occasion where the police or some force will come to the home, knock on the door, and force an adult to do anything. I think it's pay taxes and sign up for the selective service, sign up for the military basically in the US, if you're male. You can commit crimes in the home, obviously, but then the police need to obtain a warrant to enter the home and investigate your criminality, which is just entirely different than a parent deciding that, you have to brush your teeth tonight and that's it. You have to do your homework. You have to eat your vegetables. You have to, right? There's no escape from these sorts of rules. A kid can't go and close the door to their room because obviously it's not their door, it's not their room. And so that is what I'm objecting to. Compulsory rules for kids, I think, are always a bad idea. I think there's always a better option, and they enforcing these compulsory rules causes a lot more harm than I think we realize. And so that's the idea of sovereignty, is for kids not to be the subject of arbitrary rule enforcement. All right, I'll keep on reading here. Kids can rarely opt out. Rules for kids almost always entail force. Even if force isn't applied directly, the mere threat of it is enough. In the absence of force, a kid may be made to feel so uncomfortable, either through shaming or deprivation of privileges, that they are essentially forced psychologically. And since kids are dependent on their parents, they can't escape. Right? So an adult can go home, live on their own. They can raise their own food. They can, right? They're not dependent on others, and so they have the freedom to opt out. Whereas kids are bound, right? They're bound by their helplessness, and they didn't choose to be helpless. They didn't choose to be dependent on their parents. Their parents, brought them into the world of their own accord, and so it's the parents' duty to help them. So anyway, the kids can't opt out; they can't escape, And even if force isn't directly applied, the threat of force is often enough, or shame, or confiscating their items or withdrawing privileges can force or coerce a kid to comply with this or that rule. Okay. And so they talk about there's other kinds of rules. So there are rules that kids can opt out of, obviously, like I said, board games and things like that, and those are good rules. There is another thing that often falls under the category of rules, and those are boundaries. So what is a boundary? A boundary is a limitation that one sets on oneself. So I will draw boundaries around how much I will be giving of my time, of my effort, of my property. So that's not a rule that I'm enforcing on somebody else. That's a statement about what I'm willing to offer other people. And so kids setting boundaries on themselves is excellent, and adults setting boundaries on themselves is excellent. This is part of the idea that, taking children seriously does not mean that you become their slave, right? You can still enforce your own boundaries. I'm not willing to make you any kind of food that you want. I'm not willing to spend all my money on the things that my kids want. I'm not willing to drop what I'm doing and go drive them to the store, and et cetera, et cetera. So boundaries are very good. Voluntary rules and norms are very good. Compulsory rules are very bad. One trick here is that parents can't just draw boundaries around everything, right? They can't say, I'm not offering food today. They have to feed their kids, right? So they can't draw boundaries that exclude themselves from their own obligations. That's pretty interesting, right? And I don't really get into that. Where's the line between an obligation that you can't opt out of by drawing a boundary as a parent, right? I would say you're obligated to offer several different kinds of food for dinner, at least more than one, I would say. That's an interesting discussion, but I'm going to table that for now. Okay, voluntary rules and boundaries are good. Okay. As a shorthand, all references to rules in this book refer to rules that kids can't opt out of. So the word rules is really a shorthand for compulsory rules. Compulsory rules. This book is not opposed to rules. On the contrary, systems of rules that attract willing participants, such as the rules of grammar or conventions of courtesy, also known as institutions, are among the most important of human discoveries. And so that is the point. In fact, I'm such a fan of the norms of politeness, the rules of the road. There's so many rules that make life livable and enjoyable and comfortable and efficient and effective. I'm such a fan of those that I never want to force my kids to accept them without understanding them. Because if you force a kid to go through the motions of a rule, they have reason to develop resentment of you, resentment of the rules themselves, resentment of society, of the world, right? We talk about this, like some people are mad at the world, right? What does mad at the world mean? It's that you don't like the effing rules. And maybe this is a holdover from how rules were presented to you as a child, where they were forced on you without your understanding. And so some people start to develop the idea from an early age that rules are meant to be broken, celebrating rebellion for rebellion's sake, etc. So I would say that I'm such a fan of rules that I don't want to spoil them by forcing them on people who don't understand what they're for. All right. And that's it. In fact, a major problem with enforcing arbitrary rules is the damage this does to a child's engagement with our greatest institutions. So that's we kind of slipped this idea of institutions in without describing it all that much. So that might be kind of confusing. What do we mean by institutions? Basically, an institution is, as we said here, a system that attracts willing participants. So it's not just an institution. It's not just like an edifice or a building, or the institution of marriage, right? That's a good example. Marriage is an institution, is a set of norms and customs that solves problems for participants. It's an organizing feature of society that is effective and embraced willingly. People voluntarily engage with this institution by and large, and pass on the norms and customs to the next generation. So that's what I mean by institutions. And institutions are supremely valuable. That's like one of the main levers of progress, is developing and refining institutions. And what I think we really don't want to do is spoil these for kids. We want them to understand their value for their own sake. All right, so that was introduction to chapter 4, and next time we'll pick up with the 4 fouls, the 4 categories of harms that come from compulsory rules. All right, catch you later.